Hi, Deborah, aka Mom, but I'm being a news reporter today, so I get to be sassy. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for joining us today for this interview. Thanks for being on the show. So, to start off with, how long have you been homeschooling for?
I've been homeschooling for about 15 years, 16 years.
Wow. And how long have you been using a classical curriculum for?
Um, we started off using some materials from Mother of Dying Grace, which is a classical curriculum right at the beginning. And then we branched off and used some other materials. And I guess we've been using the classical curriculum for about, not sure actually, 10 years maybe? More seriously, yeah,
Wow, you've got a bit of experience then.
a little.
So, why did you choose classical curriculum?
I was attracted to the idea of teaching children according to their developmental stages. I liked the idea of doing a lot of oral work with the younger ones. I found that kids, they learn to read and they memorize so well when they're young. And if you try and force them to write too soon, it's difficult. I like the idea of the progression of how you first memorize and then you um, learn grammar and logic, and then the idea of finally being able to put forward an argument like beautifully and persuasively.
And can you tell me a bit more about how you've seen each of these stages play out in some of your kids' development?
Well, definitely the early stages, the kids love to memorize and generally very good at it. Um, we do stories, they're working on sequencing, and it's very natural, and I find it very easy almost to teach the kids that. Obviously, when they get a bit older and you see they're starting to become a bit more argumentative, they're getting those reasoning faculties and they want to try and the kids want to actually, they want to argue about something. So it's good to give them a topic to argue about rather than, the chores or something like that. Um, yeah, I think that those window opportunities to, memorize are really beautiful. And you see that later on, what you've put into the kids, what they've put into themselves, comes out in their writing and their thoughts and that.
What are some of the materials you use both for memorization as a little kid and then for argument? That's not chores when they're a little bit older.
I guess in the beginning we use poetry. We like Robert Louis Stevenson's God in the Verses. We've used that a lot. We have a few other poetry books that we've used. We use a lot of Mother Divine Grace resources. So they have like an art book. We like to memorize the names of artists. We listen to music, getting to know the names of the classical pieces of the composers. The kids at times have learned geography facts, maths facts. Trying to think what else. Latin and Greek cards. We use think it's called English from the Roots Up cards. Those were quite fun to use. Um, Argumentative, I guess. We don't use a specific resource. It's more what we're learning at that stage. So the kids, when they get a bit older, they're doing debating over certain history topics. They have to write papers um, on their point of view. They have to we have some online classes through Mother Divine Grace again, and then they get a chance to talk it out, have debates. Yeah.
You mentioned Mother of Divine Grace resources and classes, and I was
Yeah.
wondering if you could tell me a bit more about why you chose Mother of Divine Grace and then what Mother of Divine Grace provides for the family.
Right, so before we started homeschooling, we were living in England, and our first contact with homeschoolers was there. We met a lot of families, and I remember going on a camp saying, "Well, what should I do?" And the answer I got was told was Mother of Divine Grace. So I had a look at it. I was very impressed, and because all these other families were doing it, I didn't feel that it was necessary to look further afield. Um, so that's what got us started. Once we moved to New Zealand, we decided to try a few other things, but in the end, I landed going back to Mother Divine Grace. I could get a lot of support from them. The curriculum was quite well established, and for a large family, it's quite affordable. They sort of really cater to large families as well, so we appreciated that. Mm, what was the other question? Sorry.
How does Mother of
Oh
Divine
yeah,
Grace look
yeah.
like?
Yeah, so what happens is we enroll as a family, um, and I get a consultant that helps me to plan the school year for each of my students. Although they have set curriculum, there's quite a lot of flexibility, and you can also use your own curriculum. So there's I quite like that you could tailor make it to each child. I enjoyed having that support from the consultant, and my consultant's just been fantastic. So at any point I can email her and say, I'm struggling with this, I don't understand that, or this child's finding this curriculum difficult, and she's happy to accommodate that or give me some advice. Each of my children has their own student page where they can go and see their lists for the day of what sort of required, what work they need to do. They can print it off and they can work by themselves independently. If they're old enough, the younger ones need more help, but I don't have to figure out what are we going to do today, how many pages should we do, or it's kind of all done. So it makes it very easy for me as a mother with lots of children. It frees me up to do other things like cooking and cleaning and arranging and managing the home. Yeah, and yes, to answer your question, yeah.
And seeing as Mother of Divine Grace, it's a Northern Hemisphere based
Yeah.
program, right? So how does that impact how it can help your family, seeing that you're in New Zealand?
Yeah, there's a few challenges. The way it's helped me is it's a very strong Catholic curriculum. And for me, that was the most important thing. Not having a strong Catholic education myself, I wanted someone to support me in teaching the kids, and I didn't want to be missing out on important facts like not knowing. So that's what we wanted above all. Although it's Northern Hemisphere, the kids have still enjoyed learning a lot of American history. You know, we read a lot of living books. Laura Ingalls Wilder, a lot of good Catholic books are from America anyway. So that's been great. A lot of the books that they use, although they're from the Northern Hemisphere, like the maths, anyone would use here anyway. There's some challenges. You know, obviously the geography is a bit different, and history if you want to do New Zealand history, you can just do that actually. You don't have to follow their curriculum. Yeah, and we just change our holidays to suit, and classes sometimes are very early in the morning, but my kids have really liked getting up early. Some of them have really enjoyed having an excuse to get up like at 5 o'clock in the morning to do classes. But then again, those are optional. So yeah, I found them very accommodating. Yeah.
And so, what were some of the contrasts that you have seen in your kids doing this classical education versus either kids at school or kids homeschooled doing typical New Zealand NCEA exams?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of experience with NCEA exams, but if I compare to my upbringing, which was just at a typical school, the kids, number one is they learn a lot easier. Those early years where the kids are doing a lot of writing, perhaps at school, and that it can be really hard for young kids, you know, to put their thoughts on paper. It's a lot to think about, say, writing a sentence, the spelling, the grammar, never mind the ideas, you know, the mechanics of writing. And when you're doing classical curriculum, you're breaking it all down for them. So they just start in one thing at a time. And I think that makes a huge difference. I often hear my friends complaining, oh, this kid's not writing, or this kid won't write an essay. And I just think that is far too difficult at that stage. Excuse me. And I really struggled with writing at school, and we didn't do a lot of writing. I don't think it was taught very well at my school. I found also, you know, by the time the kids really learn to think about things, that's one thing I've appreciated, is if you can slow down the amount of information that you've given them, and rather do less but think more deeply about the information. When we did school, a lot of it was exam focused. It was you had to learn these facts to pass the questions in the exam to get good marks. Yeah, and where I like to think that our kids have had more of an opportunity to explore different subjects and to think about what they're learning rather than just trying to pass the exams, get the right answer down. Yeah.
Do you think the classical approach has an impact on the faith journey and the development in the Catholic faith?
I think it is a more natural approach. It's not the only approach, and it might not suit every family. I think it's a more gentle approach to learning on the one hand. On the other hand, it's rigorous because you're making sure that the kids learn their catechism questions. You're exposing them to beautiful music and art from the word go. From very young age, kids can learn hymns from church, hymns that are quite rich theologically. They don't have to just learn kids' Bible songs. They can learn some very beautiful Catholic hymns. They can even learn them in Latin. And I think you can expose them really more to the beauty and the depths of the teaching of the church, even from a young age where they might not understand it fully. They're starting to put these things into their mind, and they will stay there so that when the children grow up, they have the beautiful thoughts and music and art in their mind to help their faith and for them to reflect and meditate on. Yeah, I think also learning logic, logic helps us with philosophy and theology, and it's important to have those skills that we can think correctly about God. Yeah.
Wow. So important in the modern world.
Yeah.
And also when the kids get older and move on and to university and that, in the process of getting into university and also at whatever they do next, how do you think classical education plays out?
Well, I've had one child finish school so far and go to university.
Don't know who that is.
Well, one thing I believe that was really good was when you finish school, and I can say the same for the next two of my kids, is they will at least know how to write an essay. So when they get to university, they don't have to learn that skill. They've got that all down. They've got the grammar, they've got the paragraphs, they've got the mechanics of collecting information, thinking about it, ordering it, so they can really focus on the information at university, on putting forward an argument in a beautiful way, Whereas like when I went to university, I still had to figure that all out because I didn't learn it at school. Yeah. And getting into university hasn't been a problem. Our kids get a high school diploma when they're finished, which is an American qualification. And on top of that, we let them do an SAT. You can just apply to write that. There'll be a local centre here in Christchurch, and you pay the fee and you turn up on the day. And Mother of Divine Grace has been a very good preparation for the SATs. Our girls hardly did a lot of SAT preparation, but still did really well in the SAT. I think that's because the curriculum that they did sort of really just prepared them well for the SAT. And that was very useful to get into universities. A lot of universities know about the SAT. They use that for international students. So it's quite well recognized around the world. Yeah.
Good thing to have. And on a slightly different note, for someone who's keen to implement classical education into their home, into their curriculum, and for whatever reason, maybe they're not doing Mother of Divine Grace, or at the moment they're not, or it's not the right thing. What are some little things they can do to educate their kids classically?
I think there's a lot of stuff online that you can look at and a lot of free resources. It's not so much what you use, it's the way you teach that subject. So, for instance, if you're going to do some poetry memorization in the early years, you want to use good poems, obviously. You don't want to put junk poems into the kids' heads, but it's not so much which poems you use. It's more the fact that you use the poems, and that they're memorizing them. So I think if you want to learn classically at home and you don't think you can, go with a set curriculum, don't worry. Find out a bit about the stages. Laura Bequist has a lovely book called Designing Your Own Classical Curriculum. It's from long ago, but there's tons of stuff on the internet. Find out about the different stages. Make a little plan, start off with the basics and then just do your best. And you can get people to help you, ask around, I don't know, use the library, whatever. And then once you've got the basics under control, if you want to add in extra, you can add in more, But you just have to try and keep it simple. Yeah, and stick with the basics. Find out about the different stages of development, how children learn, and just go for it.
Wow. One more question before we wrap up. If you had to pick one thing that's your favorite thing about homeschooling with classical education, what would you pick? Sorry, I had to say the hardest question for last.
Favorite thing? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's specific to classical education. I've always just liked reading real books to kids. And one thing I didn't like at school was the history textbooks. That's all we did. And my kids learn history just through books. And I just think it's so much more enjoyable, it's so much more exciting and interesting, and yeah, such a more rich education than just learning out of a textbook. Yeah, so I guess I really like that as one of the things. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Welcome.
Hopefully we'll have you again soon.
Thanks, Anastasia. It was a pleasure.